Imagine losing a $3.2 billion customer overnight, no warning, no negotiation, not even a formal goodbye. One day they're buying millions of gallons of your milk, and the next, they've handed the entire deal to your northern rival. That's exactly what happened when Mexico dumped U.S. dairy and handed the contract to Canada. Quietly. Strategically. Devastatingly. And former President Donald Trump. He's not taking it well. Before we dive into how this shift happened and why it could permanently damage America's grip on agricultural exports, take a second to like this video, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss the stories that matter most to American families and workers. For decades, Mexico has been one of the largest importers of American dairy. From cheese and butter to powdered milk and cream, the relationship pumped billions into rural American economies, especially in states like Wisconsin, Ohio, California, and Minnesota. The partnership helped support thousands of small dairy farms and was seen as a stable, long-term trade stream. But underneath that surface, cracks were forming. Rising production costs, labor shortages, and unpredictable shipping delays made U.S. dairy more expensive and less reliable. Farmers struggled to meet demand on time. Distributors warned that costs were getting out of control. And Mexico, feeling the pinch, began quietly exploring alternatives. Canada saw the opportunity and moved fast. How Canada swooped in and sealed the deal. Canada has long had a complex dairy system, including supply management that balances domestic production with import and export quotas. But what they've always wanted was more market access. Especially in Latin America. Their producers in Quebec, Ontario, and Alberta were prepared. Their systems were streamlined. And most importantly, their logistics and pricing were finally competitive with the U.S. Canadian trade diplomats made their move. They offered Mexico more than just dairy, they offered a strategic partnership. Faster shipping routes, smoother customs processing, and training programs to ensure consistent product quality. All of it bundled in a long-term agreement worth over $3.2 billion. Mexico accepted, and just like that, American dairy was pushed out. Why Mexico pulled the plug on American milk? From Mexico's perspective, the decision wasn't personal. It was practical. Rising inflation in North America has impacted every sector, including food. Importing from the U.S. had become more expensive due to tariffs, fuel costs, and supply chain delays that began during the pandemic and haven't fully recovered. Orders were arriving late. Some shipments were inconsistent in quality. And the pricing was no longer stable. Canada, meanwhile, delivered on every front. With strong government support, updated dairy processing facilities, and a reputation for reliability, Canada checked every box. And with U.S. politics increasingly unstable, Mexico didn't want to risk future tariff threats or a broken supply chain if administrations changed again. It wasn't just about cost, it was about control. Trump's reaction, explosive and blunt. As soon as the news broke, Donald Trump made his frustration clear. Insiders say he was furious, not just with Mexico, but with the Biden administration. He views this deal as a failure of leadership, a blow to American farmers, and a direct insult to everything he tried to build with America First trade policies. According to a leaked memo from a recent rally prep, Trump said, "We made America #1 in dairy. We pushed back on unfair deals. Now they're giving away $3 billion in trade to Canada. This wouldn't have happened under my watch." He blames Biden's foreign policy for letting allies drift and for not fighting harder to keep key exports like dairy intact. And he's using the story to attack the administration's entire approach to trade. U.S. farmers feel abandoned and angry. For America's dairy farmers, this wasn't just a political story, it was personal. The average dairy farm in the U.S. is already under pressure. Feed costs are at record highs, fertilizer is more expensive, fuel prices are volatile, and labor is harder to find. Many farms are operating on razor-thin margins. For them, every export order matters. Every international buyer helps keep the lights on. Losing Mexico is a gut punch. Farmers in Wisconsin and Ohio say the news hit like a betrayal. They've worked for years to build a good reputation with Mexican buyers, meeting food safety standards, adjusting product lines, and investing in export certifications. Now, it feels like all that work was erased overnight. And for farmers who backed Trump hoping for better trade deals and stronger rural protections, this feels like déjà vu. First, the trade wars hit soybeans. Then came aluminum, beef, and now milk. Canada's playbook: smart, quiet, and aggressive. Canada didn't need to boast or campaign. They simply outperformed the US in logistics and consistency. With infrastructure funding from both federal and provincial governments, they upgraded their cold chain networks, improved dairy preservation techniques, and invested in automated processing to increase efficiency. While US agriculture battled politics, Canada focused on delivery. The new deal with Mexico isn't just a contract, it's a long-term partnership. It includes joint workshops, quality control exchanges, and even plans for co-branded dairy initiatives that could redefine product labeling in Mexican supermarkets. This isn't just a win, it's the beginning of a new Canadian dairy empire in Latin America. Mexico's bigger strategy: moving beyond the US. Mexico isn't just reshaping dairy imports, it's reshaping its entire trade model. Over the past few years, Mexico has signed or updated trade deals with countries like Chile, Argentina, Germany, and India. They're actively reducing dependency on the US, especially after repeated trade tensions during Trump's term and now Biden's inconsistent stance on North American supply chains. Mexico is focused on diversification, resilience, and flexibility. They want multiple suppliers, multiple routes, and more balanced leverage. Canada is emerging as a preferred partner because it doesn't attach heavy-handed conditions to its deals, and it doesn't flip policy with each election. Biden administration's silence raises questions. Strangely, the White House has remained mostly silent on the deal. There's been no official comment from the USDA or the U.S. Trade Representative's office. No statements of concern, no planned negotiations. It's as if Washington is trying to downplay the significance of what experts are calling one of the largest single trade redirections in U.S. agricultural history. Some believe the Biden team wants to avoid more tension with Mexico ahead of upcoming border discussions. Others think the administration is simply overwhelmed with other crises: energy, inflation, international wars, and dairy isn't at the top of the list. The long-term damage: more than just milk. Here's what makes this story even more important: this isn't just about milk. When one ally feels comfortable walking away from a major American industry, it signals to the world that U.S. suppliers are no longer guaranteed partners. This opens the door for countries like China, Brazil, or even the EU to court U.S. trade allies and offer better terms. It's a ripple effect that could weaken the U.S. position in multiple global sectors. And for a country that built its post-World War II power on economic dominance, these cracks are becoming visible. Can America win back Mexico? Maybe. But it won't be easy. Experts say America would have to offer better pricing, logistics guarantees, and maybe even concessions on other trade issues to get Mexico to revisit the deal. But even then, the infrastructure investments Canada is making mean they're not going away. At best, the US could hope for a shared export model, but the days of being the top dairy supplier may be over. Trump will use this as a 2024 rallying cry. Expect Trump to lean hard into this story on the campaign trail. He'll use it to show how Biden is failing rural America, how allies are turning their backs, and how only he can restore U.S. trade dominance. And that message may land hard in the very farming communities who are feeling the sting of Mexico's decision. Expect speeches in Wisconsin, rallies in Ohio, and maybe even visits to shuttered dairy farms. The optics are powerful, and the narrative is simple: they took your milk. They took your money. And I'm here to take it back. What U.S. farmers need right now? Farmers are calling for immediate action. They want the USDA to step in with emergency export incentives, storage support, and negotiations with new markets in Asia and Africa. Some are demanding better transparency in trade talks, while others want Congress to open an investigation into how this deal was allowed to happen unnoticed. Most of all, they want to be heard. For too long, American agriculture has been treated like background noise in political debates. But when trade breaks down, it's farmers who feel it first and hardest. If America doesn't take this seriously, more sectors could be next. Corn, wheat, beef, poultry, all vulnerable to quiet, behind-the-scenes deals that shift billions away from U.S. producers. This dairy deal is a warning: power is shifting quietly and globally. Countries like Mexico are showing the world that the U.S. isn't untouchable anymore. So next time you open the fridge and grab a glass of milk, think about where it came from. That milk may be Canadian now. And that quiet shift? It just might change the global balance of power. Do you think America can recover from this loss? Should the US fight harder to protect farmers, or is this the price of global trade? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap the bell to stay informed on the real stories behind today's biggest headlines.